Hello and welcome to Then and Now, where I'm planning to talk about landmarks, buildings, and points of interest from Baytown, Texas, and how they've changed over the years. This presentation is based on analyzing publicly available historical photos and comparing them to more recent photos publicly available from Google Street View and Google Earth. The historical photographs are available from the Sterling Library online archives. I am not representing the photographs as mine. I am simply using them to discuss landmarks, buildings, and other points of interest combined with my memories of growing up in Baytown, Texas, in the 1970s and early 80s. The project is intended to preserve some of the local knowledge of Baytown, and there are no financial interest or association with any businesses. I'm assuming if you're looking at this, you're probably at least familiar with its location, but for those who aren't familiar, Baytown, Texas is a small city of about 100,000 people just outside of Houston. It's on the east side of Houston. It's just south of I-10 primarily and north of Galveston Island. Baytown originally was three smaller towns. The three smaller towns were Goose Creek, Pelly, and Baytown. Three towns all had a history in oil production. They were boom towns way back at the beginning of the 20th century. And they combined the three smaller towns and took on the name Baytown that encompassed the city borders of all three. On the upper right, you can see this is a photo from the Goose Creek oil fields, circa 1920s. I believe this was taken in Tabbs Bay, which is just south. It's this bay just south of the red dot. I believe this is Tabbs Bay. It, of course, no longer looks this way, but 100 years ago, Baytown was a boom town, and it grew drastically because of the discovery of oil. Very similar to what happened at Spindletop in Beaumont. I'm planning to show a variety of historical photos from different time periods of various structures and landmarks and so on around Baytown and how they look today, or at least fairly close to today. So let's get started. The first place just to mention was called Bay Plaza. It was a shopping center on North Alexander Drive. It's also called Business 146. And I believe some of these photos, I know the year. Some of them I'm just making a guess based on mostly on things like the cars or the fashion, if you can see that within the photos. I believe this photo was probably in the late 60s, just judging off some of these cars. And this is how Bay Plaza originally looked. And I'll show some of the architecture compared to how it looks today. You can see some of the archways on this part of the building, and you can see they were maintained over here. There's also this small little rooftop area, which has again been maintained in the building. And for those who do not know, TG&Y was a small store very similar to a Dollar General or a Family Dollar. So it's kind of interesting that now there's a Family Dollar in the same shopping center. In the Bay Plaza parking lot, there is a fast food restaurant called Jack in the Box. They are all over at least the southern area of the U.S. I'm not sure exactly how far they expand, but I believe this photo is from the 60s, maybe the early 70s. And they had a lot different icon and mascot than they do today. In fact, if you look at the mascot, it's, I would say, pretty hideous by today's standards, quite honestly. But it was still a popular drive-thru, and it lasted many years. Today, it has gone out of business. There still are many Jack in the Boxes around the country, but this particular one closed down. Even though the building doesn't quite look the same, I assure you this is the same. I've eaten here many times back in the day. Some clues that you can tell that it is the same building. If you look at the pattern of the window panes, the serving window, and where the vertical supports are. You can see they're exactly the same. The second one out here. And you can see the sign is now, of course, missing the, the actual signage now. I believe all they did is when they converted this, they just added a small sloped roof from the top of here down to the edge of the overhang. And it would be interesting to see if they ever tear this down and they tear this piece of roof off, if the original signage is still underneath. Another big Baytown landmark is Bicentennial Park. This was built to commemorate the 200th anniversary of the American Revolution in 1776. So you can see the sign here, Bicentennial Park, July 4th, 1976. This is a picture from, when they were building it, so I would estimate it to be around 1975, early 1976. Things you can see in the photo. Lee College is in the background. There's a static display of what's called a pump jack, which are the things that kind of look like a horse that bring oil up from under the ground. There's an outdoor theater. And you can kind of see the pattern of the sidewalk, and this is how it is today. You can still see Lee College in the background. The trees, of course, have grown up quite a bit since then. The outdoor stage is still present. The pump jack is here, painted very patriotically in red, white, and blue. You can still kind of see it's a different angle, so it's a little bit hard to get exactly this, but you can kind of see the pattern of the sidewalks. One thing that has changed, the original park had this was a ditch, an open air ditch, for the lack of a better way of saying it, that separated the stage from the area where the spectators could watch the show or the concert. At some point, I'm not entirely sure which year, but eventually they actually put culverts in the ditch and then covered it over with grass. And so now the entire area can be used all the way up to the edge of the stage. And what kind of video about Baytown landmarks would be complete without mentioning the Brunson Theater? This is a photo taken on Texas Avenue. Again, I don't know the exact year, but judging from the cars, I would say this is probably the late 40s, maybe early 50s. The building it went through a period where it was very dilapidated, but has now been restored, which you'll see in the updated photo. I know some people may be offended, but yes, all the way back then they had a Confederate flag flying on the building here. That was just part of history at that time. I mean, obviously that's no longer done. And today, this is Texas Avenue. You can see they restored the sign quite nicely. Little emblem on the top is also been restored. The concrete reliefs, I always found these interesting as a kid, but they have different themes. Some of them are based on like science, industry, nature, and so on. And it's actually very much like a work of art. The sign, of course, back in the day just had plastic letters. Now it's been updated to a digital display. It's no longer a theater. Now it's used as a visitor center to the area. Building next door, which was Citizens National Bank. You can see the remains of it here. You can see it's still the original building. Behind the flags there, you can see there are glass bricks, which are still here. And this building had some really, really nice stonework and marble work. And I'll show you that in the next picture. So the building next door to the Brunson Theater is the Citizens Bank. This is from, again, the Sterling Library. It's a clipping, probably, I don't know if it's an ad or if it's something from the Baytown Sun, perhaps. But it's just to show this is indeed the building. It mentions that it was opened on September 29th, 1920. So that is, that building has been there a minute. And you can still see, even though it looks a little different, this is the building. You can tell by the recessed entryway. There and same here. Some of the windows you can see are this narrow style, but it looks like they've added. So this second one, they probably extended it and then added another pane to the window. The marble work is the same, and the stonework, you can see same pattern here and here. And one thing you can see, which was common back then, but it actually says Citizens Bank in the sidewalk. It has a little marble inlay area. And so indeed, this is the same building. And now it's used as a city office of some sort. The interior of Citizens Bank, I went in here many times as a young child with my mother. When she would deposit checks, cash checks. I know everyone uses credit cards and debit cards and everything is digital now, but there was a time when you had to physically go into a bank to see a teller to make deposits, cash checks. And if I'm not mistaken, we actually paid our water bill or perhaps our electricity bill in the bank, and they forwarded it to the utility company. But it was a fascinating building. The building is still there. I don't know if the interior still looks the same. Most likely it's been remodeled. But this is very much how it looked back in the day. A more utilitarian building, just to take note of, is what used to be called the bus barn, which is kind of interesting because they usually didn't park buses there, at least when I was a kid. But it was the building that the city used to store a great many of their utility vehicles. So tractors, trucks, dump trucks, all sorts of things like that, and probably some buses too. They actually had another building about a mile away where they stored all the school buses. But I don't know the year of this. Again, this is from the Sterling Municipal Library Archives. But this looks like a steam-powered tractor, which would probably place it around 1910s, 1920s, maybe 1930s. And it was just an old tin building. It's on Lindbergh Street. I lived about 3 blocks from this structure. And so as a kid, many, many times I rode my bicycle all around this area. This photo is more from about the 2010s from Google Street View. Sorry, I didn't catch the actual date when I did the screenshot of it, but nothing has really changed. You can see it's exactly the same. This is immediately behind Lee High School. And like I said, many times I've ridden my bicycle all in this area and not really anything has changed. Although now it's been torn down and there's nothing here anymore, just an empty field. The next thing I was going to talk about is the remains of the bridge to Hog Island and Morgan's Point Ferry. Hog Island is, this is Tabbs Bay that I mentioned early on in the intro to the video. This is Baytown. You can see the Goose Creek Field petroleum area up here, sometimes referred to as Evergreen. You can see it says Evergreen Road. This is Goose Creek coming through here. This is the Houston Ship Channel. Years ago, this is the southernmost end of Lee Drive. Years ago, there was a bridge that went from Lee Drive all the way across Tabbs Bay to Hog Island. You can still see remnants of the road on Hog Island. And where people were going out here is there was a ferry at one point called the Morgan's Point Ferry that was on this side, where they would then take you across the Houston Ship Channel to LaPorte. Hurricane Carla in 1961, I think, which was before I was born, destroyed the bridge. So many of the pilings and so on were still present out in the bay, but the roadway was destroyed and a lot of it was just pushed off of the pilings. So let me go to the next one. So let me show you a zoomed in view of this area. Here's the southern tip of Lee Drive. This is the Evergreen area, or the oil field area there. You can see this is a more current aerial photograph, but you can still see some of the pilings from the bridge. Now, when I was a child, this went way out, almost at least a third of the way across, if not halfway across the bay. And as a kid, we rode our bicycles all over this oil field. It wasn't particularly well controlled from a security point of view, but we didn't get hurt. We didn't do anything bad. We just like to go out and explore, drive around our bicycles on the gravel roads. We also had a canoe that we would bring down Goose Creek and around the corner and play around on these beaches, and sometimes just kind of go out, again, just out of curiosity, paddling around the old oil well equipment and so on. And so this is the photo on the left is more what it looked like when I was younger. It extended way out. This is Hog Island out here. You can see some of the oil equipment, oil derricks, and so on. And they had pipes, the oil company, I suppose, once the roadway blew off of the bridge pilings, they thought, well, why let this go to waste? Let's just put the pipes that come from the oil wells onto here. And the funny thing is they were all lined up next to each other, and it actually made a really nice walkway. So as a young kid out there exploring, we walked out here many times and went fishing and so on. It was essentially like a pier. And again, nothing ever, not that it was the best thing to be doing, but it was the 70s, different era and so on. Nowadays, the road is more or less overgrown. The pilings have largely been taken away, as you saw from the overhead view, and maybe only 4 or 5 rows remain. You can tell this is the same site, though, even though the oil derricks are all gone now. You can see these 2 really tall power pilings right here and right here. They're the same. And these things are really tall because they cross the Houston Ship Channel, and huge ships have to pass underneath the power lines. The other thing you can see is some of these loading cranes. You can kind of make them out here. But yes, this is how it looks now, how it looked in probably the early 70s. And I'm sorry I do not have a photo of the actual bridge that used to go out to Hog Island. Another place, at least a lot of kids in my generation loved to go to, was Kmart. It was the Walmart of the 70s. And here's this was out on Pruett Street. I believe the cross street was Park, so the corner of Pruett and Park, I believe. But this photo, if I had to guess, probably from the 60s, judging by the cars. You can kind of make out the Kmart sign here. There was a couple of smaller businesses and then this fabric store here on the corner. Kmart went out of business a long time ago. There are a couple left in the United States. I don't remember where. I think New Jersey has one, and I think there might be one even in Guam. But in general, Kmart is pretty much out of business. And this is the remains of the building. And you can still make out the sign area and just the general structure of the building. The fabric store, what used to have glass, you can see they've covered it up with plywood, but this is indeed the same structure today versus back in the 60s. Another famous landmark is the steam engine 895. This was donated in 1957, I believe I read. It was originally built in 1913, but it reached the end of its useful lifetime and was donated in 1957. And so presumably this photo is from around 1957, 58, 59, and they built a series of track where they moved the train, and then they moved the track from behind it to put in front of it, and they moved it all the way across town. I'm not entirely sure which intersection this is. It's kind of hard to say. I think it may be Texas Avenue in Maine, but I can't swear to that. And this is where the steam engine 895 ended up, which is out at Roseland Park. So you can see, looks pretty darn similar. Of course, it's facing a different way from the angle. I do have another image of Roseland Park to point out, but growing up in the 70s and early 80s, Roseland Park was a place that many families went, and we had many birthday parties and family gatherings out there. One thing that is definitely different is when I was a child, this fence was not around the train, and the train was practically a piece of playground equipment. And even though we probably shouldn't have, it was very common for all of the kids to climb under, in, on top of, stand inside the cab and pretend you're driving the train and so on. Now, of course, they built a fence to keep people off of it. So this is an overhead view of Roseland Park. This image on the top, you can see they haven't built some of the houses that are there now, but it has to have been taken at some point beyond 1957, since that's when they donated the train engine, the steam engine 895, which that is what this is here. So that's how I can sort of date this picture. It can't be any earlier than 1957. This is it today. And just to kind of point out some other things that have changed in regards to Roseland Park. There was a swimming pool. This was a nice swimming pool that we used to go to periodically. There was a community center. There was a like a play field to play football, soccer, baseball, whatever. There was some light woods and a few picnic tables and maybe a swing set or two scattered about. There was a gravel parking lot and a kind of primitive boat ramp. So they have made some improvements. Of course, you can see it's now generally paved everywhere. In this photo, the community center is there. It's actually not there any longer. I don't know when they tore it down, but probably in the last 5 years, I would say. There's nothing here but a slab, but I don't have a more current overhead view than this. The swimming pool has also been taken out. There's kind of like a little water park or something. I couldn't quite tell what it was, but the area is at least still being used, but the swimming pool itself is gone. The field's still there. The steam engine 895 is still there, of course. They did build a proper playground, and they really improved the boat dock, paved the area, and now there's a series of picnic tables and little covered areas that you can fish and have a picnic out here on Cedar Bayou. They also dredged this out and dug it out, and you can see where they built houses now, so people have access to the waterway if they have a boat. And probably one of the most famous symbols of Baytown is the old oak tree. This is the oldest picture I've seen. I've seen it in lots of places, but it's from the 30s. You can tell from the car just how old it was. This is a little bit newer picture. This is from, it says 1974 again, from the Sterling Library. It's not my photo, but you can see just how different the area when it had grown up from the original picture. This is looking down towards the Brunson Theater, and this is today, or fairly close today, at least within the last 10 years. The oak tree is still here. I would say the branches have kind of thinned out a bit. You can see it used to be all concrete and asphalt. They have tried to green it up a little bit with some flower beds and some actual grass. Also here it was 4 lanes. They went ahead and made it 2 lanes because we don't get the same traffic down Texas Avenue as we once did. And you can see the building. I want to say it was maybe related to car repair or something, or a car dealership. I can't quite remember. But now it is it's some loft apartments. This building is still there though. The Jacinto Hospital is another famous landmark for those that grew up in the Baytown area. It was built in the 50s. This is a photo from 1952, and it was abandoned. Actually, I thought it was a fairly young building to be abandoned, but that was the decision by the city planners, I suppose. And this is indeed the same building. It's on Decker Drive. It's kind of by the Sterling Library, and if you look, you may think that's not the same building, but it actually is. And some of the clues that you can look at to tell, this looks like it's only 3 stories, which it is, of course. If you come over here and you counted, you'd say there's 1 story here, 2, 3, but this one is 4. But you can see they added a story on. I don't remember what year they did this, but they actually added to the hospital. They added an extra floor. If you see in the front, the same thing, 1, 2, 3 stories. And on the bottom, they filled the windows in, 2, 3, and then they added another story to the top. The physical plant, cooling system, and so on, that was originally there, I'm sure over the course of 60, 70 years, they upgraded it and they enclosed it. So that looks a little different. This sidewalk isn't the best clue, but you can see, I think this is the same one, even though the angle looks a little bit different. It may just be the angle of the photo. And the road and sidewalk pattern is generally the same, even though this isn't far enough back where you can see it. But again, having lived through this era, not the 50s, but having lived and seen this building many, many times, I can assure you this is indeed the same building. And now it's been totally demolished. Once it had been abandoned, it became a site for urban explorers, homeless. People would go in there and, graffiti it and light fires and do things like that. So they finally basically demolished it. So this is a really older picture here, 1928. And this is from standing on Texas Avenue looking west. This is roughly at the intersection of Commerce Street, which is right here. And it's looking west. The oak tree that I was talking about is way down here in the center of the road. The Brunson Theater would be here on the left. And this is roughly almost 100 years later. And this is how it looks now. And some of the buildings you may think, how can you say this is the same place? Or how can you tell? This, for one, again, I grew up and saw some of these buildings change as they remodeled them and so on. The building here on the left, Bay Vending, you can still see some of the brickwork, even though they've added to it. You can still kind of make out the same pattern. These buildings have all been destroyed so that they can build the town square. They were in bad shape even when I was a kid. This side has a little bit more, there's a big clue that you can tell, which is these arched designs, you can tell are these two right here. You can also tell the pattern of the brick, even though the photo is very old and pretty monochromatic. You can see that this is the same kind of brick pattern. And the dead giveaway is, of course, the little arch patterns on the top. And you can just in general look at the size of the building next to it and so on, and you can see it follows the same pattern. But very interesting from almost 100 years ago, how it looked and how it looks now. Another view of Texas Avenue. This would be standing on the buildings where the ones that were torn down to make room for the town square, and looking kind of diagonal across the street. This one's a little bit harder to tell. I'm estimating this in the 50s, again, mostly looking at the style of the cars. The Brunson Theater is over here on the left on our side. It's not in the photo. And the oak tree would be down this way. And I'm basing this same view. This is not quite today, obviously. It's from 2008. But you can see the pattern of some of these buildings, the entryways along in here. You can match them up. They're not exact because I think some of these have been remodeled over the years. But the one that has stayed really consistent is this building here. And I do not remember what it is, but this large gray building has been that way. And you can see it has some of the same pattern in terms of stone and marble. There's a band around the bottom and then a concrete look at the top 2 stories. And so I'm fairly certain this is a more modern view of this view, although I can't get up higher because the buildings are gone, of course. And if you look a little bit closer to our time, the building is still there. It's a little clearer. This is the 2008 view, so you can compare from here to here. But again, you can see some of these entryways and you can kind of line them up. But they have changed. Like you can see this one is now painted green. They went ahead and sealed it in, so it isn't open. You can't walk into it anymore. It just has that little angled area and then straight across. So at first it may not register that it's the same as the original photo, but the buildings are consistent. And some things have changed as well. They had the old style street lights. Now they have some more decorative, nice looking street lights as they've tried to improve the aesthetics of the downtown area. Now on the other end of Texas Avenue, looking east, this isn't quite at Pruett Street, but it's from that side of Pruett Street. The oak tree would be behind us if you were in this view. You can see the Brunson Theater on the right. The big landmark that's kind of a giveaway for this is the Citizen Savings Bank, which is on the right as well. I'm kind of guessing this is probably from the 60s, mostly looking at the cars. It could be the early 70s, though, also. And some of the buildings are not exactly the same. Again, they've been remodeled over the years, but a couple that have not, the Brunson and this one, the Citizen Savings. So obviously, this is how it looks today. It's no longer a bank. Now it's an event center that you can rent out for parties and weddings and things like that. And of course, the restored Brunson Theater down the way. And the final structure I'll kind of briefly talk about is the Bay Theater. This was in what we always refer to as Old Baytown. It is on Market Street, over kind of towards the Exxon refinery. And this is a photo, again, from the Sterling Library, 1942. See, it had some neon lights and so on. And it went out of business for a long period of time and eventually was repurposed into a church. And you can tell this is definitely the same building. It has some very unique architecture here in the front. You can see this is the same. See the curved, almost like turret structure. The same. Of course, the little pointy bit on the top is gone. The original sign is replaced by a cross, and you can see that the little windows where they put the movie posters, they're still there. 2 entry doors are still there, and the little ticket window is still there. However, the church also eventually went out of business, and this went out of business, and now it is nothing but an empty lot. And you, again, can tell for consistency's sake, you can see the tree is obviously the same tree. This house here in the background is this house. And so in the future, of course, people just know it as an empty lot. But it started life all the way back in 1942 as a theater, became a church, and now it's no more. Okay, well, that should wrap it up for this video. I hope you enjoyed our Then and Now series, taking a tour of various points of interest in Baytown, Texas. Come back to the channel again. I'm planning to do a part 2. I have another set of photos that I've been looking through and trying to find the modern view as well. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.